Iran's supreme leader is dead, killed by a joint American and Israeli military strike while sitting in his own office in Tehran. And as of this moment, no one knows who will lead Iran next, whether this war will stay regional, or whether the world just crossed a line it cannot come back from. For 36 years, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was the immovable center of the Islamic Republic of Iran. He survived sanctions, uprisings, assassinations of those around him, and a decade of maximum pressure. He did not survive February 28, 2026. What you need to understand, and what we are going to take apart piece by piece in this report, is not just how he died, but what his death sets in motion. Because what comes next in Tehran may matter more than what happened in the hours before dawn on Saturday. And the answer, as you will see, is far from settled. Let us begin with the strike itself, because the mechanics of what happened tell us something important about the scope and ambition of this operation. In the early morning hours of Saturday, February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched what American officials described as a major combat operation against Iran. President Donald Trump announced the strikes in an 8-minute video released at 2:30 in the morning, Eastern Time. The operation has been named Operation Epic Fury on the American side. The Israeli military called its component Operation Roar of the Lion. These were not surgical strikes against a single facility. According to reporting from NBC News, the Associated Press, and Al Jazeera, the United States deployed Tomahawk land attack missiles fired from Navy ships across the region, alongside fighter jets striking hundreds of targets across Iran. Strikes were reported in Tehran and across 24 of Iran's provinces. The scale and breadth of targets confirm this was a campaign designed to degrade Iran's military capacity comprehensively, not merely to send a signal. But the strike that changed history was the one that found Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. According to reporting from NPR, citing a source briefed on the strikes and later confirmed by Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, Khamenei was killed in an Israeli airstrike on his compound in Tehran. At the time of the strike, according to Iran's own Fars news agency, he was not in a bunker or a safe house. He was at his office, inside his residence. Two Iranian sources told Reuters that Khamenei had been meeting with two of the most senior figures in the Islamic Republic, Ali Shamkhani, the influential former secretary of Iran's National Security Council, and Ali Larijani, the head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, at a secure location shortly before the strikes began. Shamkhani, according to Israeli state television, was also killed. So was Major General Mohammad Pakpour, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. CBS News, citing an intelligence source, reported that approximately 40 senior Iranian officials were killed across the strikes. 40. That is not a decapitation strike. That is an attempt to dismantle an entire command structure in a single morning. Iran denied it at first. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told NBC News in the early hours that both Khamenei and Iran's president were still alive, as far as he knew. Semi-official news agencies Tasnim and Mehr initially reported that Khamenei was alive and, in their words, steadfast and firm in commanding the field. But the denials did not hold. By early Sunday morning, Iranian state media, including the Islamic Republic of Iran broadcasting network, confirmed what the world had already been told. Khamenei was dead. He was 86 years old. He had ruled Iran since 1989. The government declared 40 days of national mourning and 7 days of public holidays. And so the question that now hangs over everything, the question that every intelligence agency, every government, every oil market and financial institution on the planet is trying to answer right now, is the one we posed at the start. What comes next? To understand what the Islamic Republic does after losing its supreme leader, you first need to understand what the office of supreme leader actually is, because it is unlike any political structure in the modern world. The position was created by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini following the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Under Iran's constitution, the supreme leader holds authority over the judiciary, state media, all security forces, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and all major strategic decisions, codified under Article 110 of the Constitution. The President of Iran is elected by the people, but the supreme leader stands above the president in virtually every matter of consequence. This is not a parliamentary system or a presidential democracy. It is a theocratic structure in which ultimate authority flows from religious qualification and revolutionary legitimacy, not from a ballot box. Khamenei himself was not the obvious choice when he was elevated in 1989. He lacked the senior religious credentials the original constitution required. The constitution was quietly amended just months before Khamenei's death to lower the bar, enabling Khamenei's elevation. He spent the following 3 decades consolidating extraordinary power, extending the authority of the office far beyond what Khamenei had envisioned. His death does not just create a vacancy, it creates a void at the center of a system designed around a single man's judgment and authority. Iran's constitution does provide a process for exactly this scenario. Under Article 111, if the supreme leader dies or is incapacitated, an interim council assumes power. That council is composed of 3 figures: the president, the head of the judiciary, and a jurist from the Guardian Council chosen by the Expediency Discernment Council. The Assembly of Experts, an 88-member body of qualified clerics elected by Iranian voters, is then tasked with selecting a new supreme leader. This process has played out only once before in the history of the Islamic Republic, in 1989, when Khomeini died. It took days to resolve then, in a country that was not simultaneously under military attack. Iran's security chief, Ali Larijani, announced on Sunday that the transition process would begin immediately. He confirmed that an interim leadership council had been formed, comprising President Masoud Pezeshkian, Chief Justice Gholam Hossein Mohseni-Ejei, and Ayatollah Alireza Arafi, a 66-year-old cleric who serves on the Guardian Council and the Assembly of Experts, and who was hand-picked for the Guardian Council by Khamenei himself in 2019. Iran's foreign ministry confirmed Arafi's appointment. It is a constitutionally correct process. But a constitutionally correct process does not resolve the deeper question that analysts have been asking for years. Who actually controls Iran now that Khamenei is gone? That question points directly at the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, and it is the question that may determine whether this conflict expands or contracts in the days ahead. The IRGC is not simply Iran's military, it is a parallel state. It controls vast sectors of Iran's economy, its intelligence apparatus, its ballistic missile program, and its network of regional proxies, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to the Houthis in Yemen. The Council on Foreign Relations, in an assessment issued following Khamenei's death, stated plainly that taking out the supreme leader is not the same as regime change, because the IRGC is the regime. Marco Papic, chief strategist at Clocktower Group, described the economic stakes bluntly. The Iranian economy, he said, faces becoming a parking lot unless the next supreme leader is more amenable to negotiating with the United States. But the IRGC has not indicated any desire to negotiate. Within hours of Khamenei's death, the IRGC declared what it called the most devastating offensive operation in the history of the Islamic Republic of Iran. It announced strikes targeting 27 American military bases across the Middle East, as well as Israel's military headquarters in Tel Aviv, the Tel Nof Air Base, and a major Israeli defense industrial complex. Iranian state television reported attacks on Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Ali Al Salam Air Base in Kuwait, Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates, and the United States Navy 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. Explosions were reported in Dubai, Doha, Abu Dhabi, and Manama. The IRGC named its retaliation campaign Operation True Promise 4, the latest iteration of a series of retaliatory strikes that began during Iran's 2025 conflict with Israel. The scale of Iran's retaliation confirmed something that many analysts had warned about for years. Iran had been preparing for exactly this scenario. The New York Times reported before the strikes began that Khamenei had put in place detailed contingency plans for his own succession and emergency chains of command in the event that he or other top leaders were killed. Those plans elevated Ali Larijani to manage the crisis. A senior Arab diplomat told the Times of Israel that while Khamenei's killing is a massive blow to the Islamic Republic, the regime had prepared for it. That diplomat added a detail worth holding on to. Iran knows the United States wants this military campaign to end as quickly as possible, and Iran's strategy, the diplomat assessed, will be to drag it out. That assessment maps precisely onto what we have seen in the first 48 hours of this conflict. Iran is not collapsing, it is retaliating, and it is doing so in a way that is designed to make American military presence in the Middle East, spread across bases in Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and the UAE, an expensive and painful liability. The human cost of what has already happened demands accounting, because behind every strategic calculation are real people whose lives were changed forever on Saturday morning. Iranian state media reported that strikes hit 24 of Iran's provinces. The most devastating single incident reported so far was a strike on a girls' primary school in the southern city of Minab. Iranian authorities, confirmed by Iran's foreign minister, reported that more than 140 children were killed in that strike. It was a Saturday morning, the start of the Iranian school and work week. The girls were at their desks. United States Central Command spokesperson Captain Tim Hawkins told NPR that the US military was aware of reports about civilian casualties, was taking them seriously, and was investigating. He stated that the protection of civilians is of utmost importance and that the US military had never, and would never, intentionally target civilians. The Israeli military had not commented on that specific strike as of the time of this report. Those deaths are confirmed by Iranian officials and require independent verification from parties not involved in the conflict. But they represent the human dimension of this war that governments and military briefings do not always foreground. Khamenei's own daughter, son-in-law, and grandchild were killed in the same strikes that killed him. His family's deaths were confirmed by Iran's semi-official Fars news agency. 4 members of his immediate family killed alongside him. The regional and international reaction to these strikes is itself a story of profound consequence, because it reveals how the world is positioning itself as this conflict unfolds. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres condemned the attacks in explicit terms, stating that the use of force by the United States and Israel against Iran and the subsequent retaliation by Iran across the region undermine international peace and security. The European Union's Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Council President Antonio Costa called the conflict greatly concerning and urged restraint. The EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, described Khamenei's killing as a defining moment in the history of Iran. NATO stated it was closely monitoring the situation and had heightened its missile defense vigilance to protect member states. The Gulf states, whose territory is now directly in the line of Iranian retaliation, moved rapidly. The United Arab Emirates ordered schools and universities to shift to remote learning for 3 days. Airports in Dubai and Abu Dhabi reported damage from Iranian strikes overnight. More than 1,400 flights were cancelled across 7 major Middle Eastern airports as airspaces closed. A drone struck a port in Oman, injuring a worker, marking the first attack on that country since Iran's retaliation campaign began. In Pakistan's Karachi, at least 9 people were killed when protesters stormed the United States consulate in response to Khamenei's killing. In Baghdad, hundreds of Iraqis attempted to breach the fortified Green Zone where the American embassy is located. The ripple effects of Saturday's strikes are not contained to Iran or Israel. They are spreading outward, and their ultimate boundaries remain unknown. Oil markets are responding to what energy analysts are calling a potential supply shock of historic proportions. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which approximately 20% of the world's oil supply passes, runs along Iran's southern coast. Iran has previously threatened to close it in the event of a major conflict. Iranian General Mohsen Rezai stated that Iran had opened the strait to shipping, for now, but added that American warships remained legitimate targets for the Iranian military. Standard Chartered's global head of research, Eric Robertson, noted in a client letter that investors had been significantly underpricing geopolitical risk in the weeks before this conflict began. The phrase, "for now," attached to the Strait of Hormuz's current status, is the two most consequential words in global energy markets today. More than 3,400 flights have already been cancelled across the region. Supply chains running through the Persian Gulf are being reassessed by every shipping company that transits those waters. The economic consequences of a sustained conflict, even one that does not directly close the strait, are already being felt in energy prices, aviation costs, and insurance premiums for vessels operating in the region. And then there is the question that no government has publicly answered, the one that shapes every scenario that follows. What does the United States actually want to achieve? President Trump addressed this in his early morning video statement on Saturday. He cited Iran's support for proxy groups including Hamas and Hezbollah, the Iran hostage crisis of 1979, the killing of American service members by Iran-backed groups across the region, and Iran's alleged pursuit of nuclear weapons. He urged members of the IRGC to lay down their weapons and accept immunity. He addressed the Iranian people directly, telling them that when the strikes are over, the government will be theirs to take, and calling it probably their only chance for generations. He said a diplomatic solution was, in his words, easily possible, and that it was much easier now than it was a day ago, obviously, because they are getting beat up badly. Trump confirmed in a phone call with NBC News that he believes most of Iran's senior leadership is gone, saying the people that make all the decisions, most of them are gone. When asked who he would like to see replace Khamenei, Trump said, "I don't know, but at some point they'll be calling me to ask who I'd like," and added that he was only being a little sarcastic. What those statements reveal, taken together, is a policy that combines the language of regime change with the framing of peace. Whether those two goals are compatible in a country of 90 million people whose military structure remains largely intact, and whose IRGC has just pledged its most devastating offensive operation ever, is the central question of this war. Here is what we know with confidence as of this moment, and here is what remains genuinely uncertain, because in a situation this fluid, the distinction matters enormously. We know that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader for 36 years, was killed on February 28, 2026, in a joint American and Israeli strike. We know that approximately 40 senior Iranian officials were killed alongside him. We know that Iran has constitutionally established an interim leadership council, with Ayatollah Alireza Arafi joining President Pezeshkian and Chief Justice Mohseni Ejei to manage the country until a new supreme leader is chosen by the Assembly of Experts. We know that the IRGC remains intact, is actively retaliating, and has vowed to intensify its strikes. We know that American military bases across the Middle East have been hit. We know that civilian populations across the Gulf are living under the threat of Iranian missiles and drones. We know that a girls' school in Minab was struck, with mass casualties among children, a fact that demands full and independent investigation. What we do not know is whether the IRGC will fracture, comply, or escalate beyond what we have already seen. We do not know who will ultimately emerge as Iran's next supreme leader, or whether that person will seek negotiation or confrontation. We do not know whether the Strait of Hormuz will remain open. We do not know whether Iran's proxy networks in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen will act independently to widen this conflict. We do not know how long the United States intends to sustain this military campaign, or what conditions it would accept as a basis for ending it. What we do know is this. The Islamic Republic of Iran has existed for 47 years. It has survived revolution, war, sanctions, internal uprisings, and the deaths of its founders. Whether it survives this is the question that will define the coming weeks. The world is watching. History is being made, and the answers are not yet written.